There it goes.
Hi all, and welcome to our LinkedIn live today. I'm so excited to have our guest for the day. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Rachel, and I'm a fractional sales manager and business coach. And I'm so excited to have Steve with us today. And I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hey, Rachel, thanks for having me. And yeah, super excited to be here with you. So I am the founder and CEO of a company called Alteza, where we help small businesses get larger by matching them up with experienced sales professionals, the key word being experienced sales professionals on a part-time basis, who get into the business and close deals. So very complementary to the work that you're doing.
Yes. Well, that's why I'm very excited to kind of get into the nitty-gritty with you. I would invite our audience to, if you have any questions for myself or Steve, to throw them in the comment section below and we'll get to them. But to kick us off, what got you started down the path of fractional sales reps, and how did you decide to approach that?
Yeah, love telling the story, Rachel. I've been in sales pretty much my whole career, and I found out probably early 30s or so, I found out that I'm more, because of my entrepreneurial kind of DNA, I was definitely more attracted to doing sales for emerging growth, kind of smaller emerging growth companies than I was in more of the enterprise type of company, just because I don't do well with lots of constraints, so I know that about myself now. But because of that, I was always going into smaller, not pure startups, but emerging growth businesses, a lot of technology companies, a lot of professional services companies. And here, so there's this tension that I saw happening whenever I was talking about coming in and leading sales for those businesses. And that was, okay, experienced salespeople are not cheap. And cheap salespeople are not experienced. And so these businesses would have to wrestle with that tension and go, gosh, which way do we go? But the both of them feel scary for different reasons. And so I would see this kind of wrestling match going on with the owners of those businesses. And it just planted this seed in my mind that, I feel like there should be a third option. It shouldn't be an either or. There should be three options. But when I went out and looked at the market to see if there was any way that you could hire experienced salespeople, especially closers, on a part-time basis, I really didn't see much out there. So, once I got my kids out of college and had a little bit of freedom to go take the risk of starting a business again, I decided that's what I was going to do. I wanted to go solve that problem. So
I think a lot of times the senior sales reps have those like golden handcuffs on, and the folks that are younger or maybe less experienced in sales, they just don't know what to expect. So you have a lot of churn when it comes to your employee retention because people burn out or don't like it very much. And so it's really interesting to me that you've come up with the solution for those experienced sales reps that want to try something different, but still have that opportunity to maintain the lifestyle that they're used to.
Yes. Yeah. And there's, now with all of the, we've seen a lot of tech layoffs, right? And just layoffs in general over the last, couple of years. And so there's a bunch of really talented salespeople out there who are kind of tired of the whole corporate world of getting played and jerked around, as they would say it. And so we can give them an opportunity, like you said, to earn a good living for themselves, do it on their terms with a lot of freedom and flexibility, but then also help these smaller businesses scale in a super cost-effective way. So it's a ton of fun. I love it.
Now, can you explain how they are different, your fractional sales reps? How are they different than a traditional sales team?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious answer is that they're just working for a bucket of hours a month. They're part-time, not full-time, so you don't have the salary, the benefits, all the other things that go along with it. And by nature, it's a constrained model, right? Because typically we're deploying salespeople into a business anywhere from 20 hours a month to 60 hours a month, typically. And so if you look at it from a weekly standpoint, it's like, okay, so they're going to be in there anywhere from 5 hours a week to maybe 20 hours a week, right? And so what that does, because it's a constrained model, is it forces the salespeople who are in that situation to be very focused on their activity, and it forces the business owner or the leader, the sales leader, manager, to be really careful about what they put on that salesperson's plate. Because it's like, hey, if we're only getting 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, we better make sure those 10 hours are used wisely. And so that's one of the characteristics of it that I think is actually a good thing. When you think about kind of the value of having some constraints, it forces you to be super focused.
Yeah. Well, when I think of a traditional sales human personality, we like to keep things different in our day. We don't like to be stuck in the office. We like to be talking to folks and getting out. So I bet that that's nice for your sales reps as well, as they get to learn something new, meet new people, get creative with their ideas, and then be able to do the same thing for maybe their other clients.
Yeah, it's true. I think in general, salespeople tend to be pretty high energy, very creative, very relational. And so if they're kind of doing the same thing day in and day out, they get bored pretty quickly. So in our model, we give them the opportunity to, again, like you said, they're working different business models, different ideal client profiles. So it just creates a lot of creativity, opportunities for creativity for them. And they typically like that a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. And I guess, besides the financial aspect of it, because it would be helpful for a small business to be able to start somebody 5 hours a week and then grow from there financially instead of committing to a 40-hour W-2 employee with benefits and everything else that comes along with it, taxes. What are the other benefits that you're seeing folks come up with when they are doing a fractional sales rep instead of hiring somebody full-time?
Yeah, well, you touched on some of the big ones, Rachel. So there is the opportunity to grow slowly. I think I love going back to the concept that Jim Collins talks about in Great by Choice, where he talks about bullets before cannonballs. So it's all about, great companies usually test things before they go all in on them. So this is a great way to do that with salespeople. And then it's very flexible, so you can grow, right? They can grow with you and then be a really nice bridge to that, full-time sales team when you're ready to do it. So that's one of the big advantages that you touched on. Here's the other one that's kind of interesting, is that there's several articles out there, if you go Google it, that where they've done the study on how much time full-time salespeople actually spend doing sales activity. And it's, interestingly enough, it's between 12 and 15 hours a week, right? So think about that. You're paying a full-time salary, benefits, and all the other expenses, and you're only getting a part-time person when it comes to their sales activity. So why not just start part-time in the first place?
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I can guarantee, because I've seen sales reps, playing hoops in the office or having, what's that game where you roll the little ball? It doesn't matter, but I've just seen them hanging out or talking sports or doing whatever, and everyone needs a break now and then. But I do agree that, if you're coming in and you have a limited amount of time, similar to myself, I have a limited amount of time. I'm going to focus in that time frame to get as much done as possible for that client. That's an interesting stat.
It was fascinating. And sometimes it's the hanging out at the water cooler or having fun, taking a mental break, which again is fine. But I think more often what happens is full-time salespeople get saddled with work that's more admin in nature and not sales activity. So, that's one of the things you're not going to do with a part-time salesperson. You're not going to give them a bunch of busy work. So, the other really interesting advantage, Rachel, I heard this from one of our clients recently, is that when he was paying a full-time salesperson, he was very reluctant to fire them when they weren't performing. Because he had so much money invested. It was kind of like, I just hope they're going to turn it around. So you just keep paying that money. And so that ends up being a very expensive experience when it doesn't work out. Where with a part-time salesperson, if somebody on our team's not working, we're going to pivot really fast. And it's, there's not a lot of pain associated with it. It's like, hey, it's not working. Let's pivot, let's change it, and let's get to a place where it's working and do it without spending a lot of money waiting on and hoping on things to change.
Well, it's also probably that fear, because if they sack that sales human, it's probably coming back on them. So they're adding
Yeah.
more things to their plate as well. So are a lot of these companies that you're working with, has the owner predominantly been the sales human before, and you're trying to then, help them grow a team?
Yeah, that's a very common scenario for us where, we are in many ways the first salesperson besides the owner founder of the business. And so that's really common. So we're helping to offload that responsibility from the owner so they can go do the other things they need to do to grow the business, right? So
Right.
that's a common use case. And then starting to what's becoming more common for us is larger companies with existing sales teams that want to use Alteza to fill a gap in the team or to run an edge initiative, a proof of concept, like on a new territory or a new product before they go all in with the full-time hire.
I bet that also creates some competition between the existing employees and that part-time salesperson, because that would be interesting if that part-time salesperson is doing a better job than some of the full-time folks.
Oh yeah, well, and time permitting, I have a story to tell about that too. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, out of curiosity, how do you get what lives in the owner's brain into that sales human? Because I have an opinion on this. I think a lot of sales or small businesses, they think, well, that salesperson needs to know everything technical. And I personally think they need to know the subject matter expert, but sales is sales. So pretty much anybody can come into anything. And as long as they know somebody who knows how to talk the talk and walk the walk, that they can pull into those conversations, then it becomes a non-issue.
Yeah. I mean, you essentially took the words right out of my mouth, Rachel, but we have this conversation over and over again with business owners who believe that they're really the only ones who can sell what they do because of what you said, the technical expertise and the mind share that they've developed over years of doing whatever it is they do. But to your point, we tell them and then we show them how to implement a motion where the salesperson focuses on sales and doing all the things you do in a sales process. And then they pull the subject matter expert in when the conversation requires that more technical kind of detail, right? And it honestly, and then over time, the salesperson will actually need that subject matter expert less and less.
Right.
But even if that becomes a long-term thing, here's what that does in the mind of the prospect is to the prospect, it conveys a team of people who have depth and breadth to the team, right? So if I'm a customer and I'm working with a solopreneur versus working with a team, which one do you think is going to give me more confidence?
Right.
Yeah, the team for sure. So it actually conveys depth and breadth that I think is helpful to closing the sale.
I would very much agree with you. And I think it's always great when you are able to pull experts in and people are like, wow, they're like really great that they took time out of their day to speak with me, because it just builds that confidence in the company that you're going to choose to work with.
Yeah.
Now, what should a business consider when adopting a fractional sales model?
Yeah, I think there's kind of three key things that we talk about, and we when we're talking to a prospective client, we really spend a lot of time digging into this. First, you need to think about, is the role that you need, is it business development or is it a closer? And a lot of business owners, as you know, Rachel, don't really understand the difference between the two. So business development is going to be more top of funnel, prospecting, going out and finding potential, prospects and leads and bringing them into the sales process. And then closing is working leads, marketing qualified leads, working them through the sales process and closing them. You have to think about what is the need that you have, because salespeople who do one really well typically don't do the other one very well. So a closer is not always great at business development and vice versa. So that's the first thing, is what's the greater need, and let that need drive the type of person that you bring in. Number two, do not ignore the sales infrastructure. Okay, so too many times the business owner makes the mistake of thinking, I'm just going to go hire this rock star salesperson, turn them loose, and they're going to just make money fall out of the sky. Well, it'd be cool if that happens, but
it would be excellent, but then I would be out of a job.
Exactly. But no, you've got to have some sales infrastructure in place. And by infrastructure, I mean, you have to have a go-to-market strategy that includes knowledge around your ideal client profile, what's your messaging, what's your unique value proposition, where are you going to intersect with these ideal clients, so that you can generate some leads, right? And then a system, so a CRM and all the things, the KPIs that we need to know, all of that stuff needs to be there. And then we plug a salesperson in to execute. If that is missing and that infrastructure is missing, the salesperson might still be able to make some things happen from just a brute force standpoint, but sustainable sales growth is going to be very difficult to achieve without that foundation in place.
Right. I also think making sure their metrics are in line, like what are your goals for this human, and are they realistic? Because if you brought in, $500,000 yourself, is it really realistic that you say, I want you, new sales rep that's working 5 hours a week, to bring in $2 million this year? It's not. So like making sure people have realistic goals that they're setting and opportunities for those sales reps to hit those is important for salespeople, because we're competitive and we want to hit goals. But
that's right. Yeah. Well, and that's why we love working in situations where someone like you has done all that legwork, right? And you've built that infrastructure. You tell us what the KPIs are that we need to hit, and we know that it's well informed, and you didn't just pull it out of thin air.
Right.
That's super helpful. So those are the first two. The last one was one we touched on already, which is be sure that you're bringing somebody on and you can just let them focus on sales activity. Do not give them any other work to do. Just leave them alone and let them do their sales.
I go into several teams where I see, they fit the person to the job description to the person, instead of fitting the person, finding the correct person that fits that job description. So what I mean by that is you might have people who are better at account management or some project management or whatever it is in a sales role, and that's not really allowing them to succeed as much because that's not what they love to do. So it's finding the correct personalities to fit to that job description. It allows you to crush it. And I really am excited about working with your crew, with some of my clients, because I think it's going to be really beneficial.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think hiring salespeople is it's a challenging thing to do, because most salespeople have great personalities and they're very engaging. And so it's easy to have a conversation with them and be wowed by their, personality, but and then you ignore some of those factors that you talked about, and you don't find that out until, it's too late.
Yeah. Well, and all of us who have hired a sales human have been snookered once or twice, like where we've like, oh, this person's great. They've asked such good questions. And then they come in and you're like, dang it, that did not go as expected. So even like sales professionals, we sometimes, need to make sure that we're looking through their backstory a little bit more to make sure that what they're saying and what their actions are line up. And I think that's the beauty of something like what you're doing, because you can, if they're not performing at a client, you can swap them out for somebody who will.
Yeah, exactly. And we use an assessment tool that's been very effective, both when we bring them on our team, they go through the assessment, and then we use that same assessment tool again when we match, so that we catch some of those things that might be more of the intangible that are hard to discern. So believe me, we've learned from experience on that front.
Yeah, we've all had those hires that were like, whoops. Now, can you share a business case where somebody used you and, they saw some pretty significant improvements in their sales outcomes, or by using the fractional sales reps?
Yeah. And, we were talking about those kind of two use cases earlier, so I'll give you a quick story from each one. So in a scenario where we had a founder of a software company who was doing sales himself and all the other things that he needed to do to grow the company, he actually was pretty successful at growing the company for several years, and then he noticed that his sales kind of plateaued. And it wasn't because he wasn't still getting leads or interest in this product. It was because all the other responsibilities that he had meant that he could not follow up with all of the leads. So he could close a deal that was right in front of him and ready to go. But if it required any kind of nurturing or follow up, or, multiple calls with multiple stakeholders, it was like, nope, don't have time for that. So he brought in an Alteza sales rep for less than 10 hours a week in that case. And we, within, less than 6 months, we had a 40% boost in sales.
That's awesome.
Mainly just because we had someone paying attention to the sales process, right? It was like, okay, we're not letting these deals fall through the cracks anymore. We're going to close them. So that was a lot of fun. And then on a second example, you talked about earlier about this competitive thing. So we had a B2B promo products company that brought in a fractional sales professional who works alongside a full-time sales professional. And within 30 days, the fractional sales professional is outselling the full-time salesperson. So, which was, that doesn't happen all the time, but it was just one of those things where everything worked out really well. And we were super excited about that. But again, to the point we were talking about earlier, this other salesperson was doing a lot of things that were not sales activity. So you can bet that when he was getting outsold by this new part-time person, that got his attention.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and I think it's really hard for somebody who is a sales rep or a sales manager sometimes to say, what is the priority here for you? You've given me these 5 tasks. My main task in my mind is to sell. So these other tasks, like what timeline do you need them and what is the priority and how many hours a week do you want me to delegate to them? Because I think no one knows how to say that initially in their career, right? They know, oh, I've been given this responsibility, so I have to do it. And then you just see that sales start to decline, and having some of those boundaries set up in place for them or ways to communicate it is really helpful.
Yeah, agreed. Yep.
Now, what would be, as we're kind of coming to a close, what would be one piece of advice that you would give businesses that are looking to maximize the benefits of a fractional sales rep?
Yeah, kind of a inside tip sort of a thing, right? Here's the one that we talk to our clients about all the time during the onboarding process, and that is delegate, do not abdicate. Okay, there's a big difference between those two things, right? Delegation is good, abdication is not. So, and by that, what I mean is you delegate and support the salesperson as you're bringing them up to speed, and do a lot of tag teaming with them, especially when, like we were talking about before with this subject matter expert piece. Do it alongside them, but delegate more and more responsibility to them over time. What happens too often is the business owner is so thrilled to have somebody on the team that knows how to sell. They just go, hey, Rachel, you got it. And you call me if you need me. But they're not really, they're abdicating the responsibility to be a mentor and leader to that salesperson instead of delegating over time. So I'd say delegate, don't abdicate.
Yeah. And then they wonder why it's not working. And it's because they've just kind of abandoned ship.
Every time. Yep.
Well,
salespeople do not have magic wands.
No, we don't have magical fairy dust that I can come in and throw over somebody and say, well, that now all your sales woes are fixed. I find a lot of times that it's either people who are wanting to grow or people who are struggling to grow. Either one of those scenarios is when they bring in someone like a fractional sales manager or fractional sales reps because of, not wanting of budget being budget friendly, but also, you have to be able to manage your expectations within the hours folks are giving you. So I think that you setting up that ahead of time is a really fantastic kind of boundary to be aware of for folks that are looking to work with sales reps.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that.
So I will go ahead and post your website and how to get a hold of you below, but I would invite our audience to reach out to you. And thank you so much for taking part of this today.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. It was fun. Always enjoy the conversation. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a lovely day, all.